Ferrari did not call an emergency meeting because Hamilton's car stopped. They called it because the car finished and the data still looked devastating. No smoke, no fire, no engine blown apart on the side of the track. Just a Ferrari that started with enough speed to create hope, then lost its punch where it mattered most, on the straights, under pressure, when Hamilton needed full power and full energy to stay in the fight. That is what makes this so serious. A broken car gives you an excuse. A limited car gives you a warning. And Hamilton's engineers may have found the kind of warning Ferrari cannot explain away, a hidden weakness inside the car that steals tenths, drains confidence, and turns a possible podium into survival mode before the fans even realize what is happening. Because if Austria was not just a bad race, if it exposed the true ceiling of Hamilton's Ferrari, then this is not a setup problem, is not a strategy problem, is not a driver problem. It is the one thing every championship team fears most. A car that can look fast enough to dream, but flawed enough to lose the title. Subscribe to the channel. At first, Ferrari tried to make Austria look like a race that simply slipped away. A difficult Sunday. A car that was not quite in the right window. A result that hurt, but did not define the season. That is the clean version. That is the version every team wants the world to hear when the cameras are still pointed at the garage and the headlines are already being written. But the clean version was not the frightening version. The frightening version was hidden inside Hamilton's car. Because the most important story in Austria was not the position he finished. It was how the Ferrari got there. Hamilton did not begin the race looking powerless. That is what makes this so uncomfortable. He had enough speed to create belief. Enough track position to make Ferrari think a strong result was possible. Enough presence near the front for the garage to feel that the race could still become something meaningful. And for a few moments, the dream was alive. The red car looked like it might fight. Hamilton looked like he might drag the result into Ferrari's hands. The fans had a reason to believe that this would not be another weekend of excuses. Then the truth started to appear. Not loudly, not dramatically, not in one moment that everyone could point to. It came slowly. A little less speed where the car needed to be strongest. A little less energy at the end of the straight. A little more tire stress. A little more defending. A little more management. And suddenly, Hamilton was not racing the cars ahead anymore. He was racing the limits of his own Ferrari. That is where Austria became dangerous. Because a normal bad race can be explained. A wrong setup, a poor strategy call, a tire choice that did not work, traffic at the wrong moment, a safety car that changed the rhythm. Formula One teams survive those problems every weekend. They hurt, but they are understandable. But when the data starts pointing toward the car itself, everything changes. Because the car is the foundation. If the foundation is wrong, every other part of the weekend has to compensate. The driver compensates. The tires compensate. The strategy compensates. The engineer on the radio compensates. And eventually, compensation becomes the race. That is the part Ferrari had to fear. Hamilton was not simply losing time. He may have been losing freedom. Freedom to attack when the opportunity appeared. Freedom to defend without burning too much energy. Freedom to stretch the stint without destroying the tires. Freedom to trust that when he pressed the throttle, the car would give him everything it had until the braking zone. That is what championship cars do. They give the driver options. They let the team choose the shape of the race. They let a champion be patient, then aggressive, then patient again. But a flawed car does the opposite. It removes options one by one. It tells the driver to manage instead of attack. It tells the pit wall to protect instead of pressure. It turns every radio message into a compromise. And once a team starts compromising too early, the rivals can feel it. That is why the Austrian data was so important. The public saw Hamilton finish below where Ferrari wanted him to be. But the engineers would have seen the hidden story, where the car lost speed, where the energy faded, where the tires began to suffer, where the performance drop became repeatable, where Hamilton's race stopped looking like a fight and started looking like survival. And data like that does not create a normal debrief. It creates urgency, because one disappointing result can be parked. One weak phase can be analyzed calmly, but a repeated pattern inside the car demands answers immediately. That is why an emergency meeting becomes believable in a situation like this. Not because Ferrari loves drama, because Ferrari cannot afford delay. Every race in a championship fight costs something. Every weekend spent hoping the problem disappears gives rivals more confidence. Every time Hamilton has to manage a limitation instead of exploiting a strength, Ferrari loses more than points. It loses control of the story. And at Ferrari, losing control of the story is never small. Ferrari is not judged like other teams. When Ferrari struggles, people do not just ask about lap time. They ask about pressure. They ask about leadership. They ask whether the team has built another car that looks promising, but cannot survive the demands of a full season. And with Hamilton inside the car, that pressure doubles. Because Hamilton did not move to Ferrari to collect respectable finishes. He moved for history. He moved for the kind of final chapter that could shake the entire sport. The most successful driver of his generation, wearing red, trying to bring Ferrari back to the top. That story is too big to survive quietly if the car is not good enough. And Austria made the question unavoidable. Did Ferrari give Hamilton a difficult car that can be improved? Or did the engineers find evidence of a deeper defect, something that limits the car no matter how perfectly Hamilton drives? Those are not the same problem. A difficult car can be tuned. A defective concept can trap a team. And that is where Ferrari's fear begins. Because the car has already shown just enough speed to make the dream feel real. That is the cruel part. It is not useless. It is not slow everywhere. It can look competitive. It can give Hamilton moments where the old magic feels possible. It can tempt the garage into believing the breakthrough is close. But a car that is close and flawed is sometimes more painful than a car that is simply slow. A slow car tells the truth early. A flawed fast car lies to you first. It gives you hope in qualifying. It gives you hope in the opening laps. It gives you hope when the fuel is heavy and the tires are fresh. Then the race gets serious. The energy cycles repeat. The tires begin to age. The heat builds. The rivals start pushing harder. And the same weakness returns. That is when the data becomes devastating, because it shows Ferrari not what they want the car to be, but what the car really is when there is nowhere left to hide. For Hamilton, that is the emotional weight of Austria. He could feel the car asking more from him while giving less back. He could feel the difference between attacking a race and protecting a result. He could feel when the Ferrari was no longer helping him create pressure, but forcing him to absorb it. And a driver like Hamilton knows what that means. He has driven cars with margin. He has driven cars that allow aggression. He has driven cars that still have something left when the race reaches its decisive point. So when the Ferrari begins to fade, he does not need someone to explain the danger. He understands it instantly. Because championship drivers do not only feel speed, they feel limitation. They feel when a race is slipping away before the timing screen tells the world. They feel when the car is making them defend too early. They feel when every lap is costing more than it should. That is why Hamilton's data matters more than a normal driver complaint. It is not just numbers. It is numbers connected to one of the most experienced drivers in Formula One history. If those numbers show the car is losing performance in the same places, then Ferrari cannot dismiss it as frustration. They have to treat it as evidence. And evidence forces uncomfortable conversations. Not about motivation. Not about effort. Not about whether everyone is working hard. Ferrari does not lack effort. The question is whether the effort is being aimed at the real problem. Because if the team misreads the defect, the season can slide away while everyone is fixing the wrong thing. That is the nightmare. Changing setup when the problem is power. Changing strategy when the problem is deployment. Blaming tires when the tires are only suffering because the car is compensating somewhere else. Blaming race execution when the deeper issue was built into the package before the race began. That is how Formula One teams lose time. And time is the one thing Ferrari cannot buy back. So block one of this story is not about panic. It is about recognition. Austria may have been the weekend where Ferrari had to stop treating Hamilton's problems as separate incidents and start seeing them as one connected pattern. The fade, the straight line weakness, the energy concern, the pressure on tires, the defensive race shape, the lost podium opportunity, all of it pointing toward the same uncomfortable possibility. Hamilton's Ferrari might not be failing. It might be limited. And a limited car is more frightening than a broken one because it keeps finishing races while quietly stealing the championship one weekend at a time. The next layer of the story is where Ferrari's problem stops looking emotional and starts looking mechanical. Because once Hamilton's engineers saw the pattern in Austria, they had to ask a much more dangerous question. Where exactly is the car losing the fight? Not where did Hamilton lose a position. Not why did the result look disappointing. Not how can the team explain the race to the media. The real question was deeper. Was the Ferrari losing because of tires? Was it losing because of drag? Was it losing because the power unit could not deliver enough at the end of the straight? Was it losing because the hybrid energy was not lasting long enough? Or was it losing because all of those problems were connected? That is the terrifying possibility. Because in Formula One, the most dangerous weaknesses rarely stay in one place. They spread through the car. A little too much drag means the car has to work harder on the straights. Working harder on the straights means more energy is used just to defend. More defending means more stress on the tires. More tire stress means the driver has less grip in the corners. Less grip means the car slides more. More sliding means even more heat. And by the end of a race, the outside world sees one simple phrase. Ferrari had poor race pace. But inside the garage, that phrase is not enough. Poor race pace is the symptom. The defect is the cause. And Ferrari had to find the cause quickly. Because Austria did not happen on a circuit where weakness can hide easily. The Red Bull Ring is short, sharp, and brutal. It asks the car the same questions again and again. Can you accelerate cleanly? Can you recover energy? Can you deploy that energy at the right time? Can you defend at the end of a straight? Can you keep the tires alive while still fighting? If the answer is slightly wrong, the lap punishes you immediately. And if the answer is wrong every lap, the punishment builds. That is why Hamilton's data mattered so much. It was not just a snapshot of one moment. It was the race telling Ferrari the same thing over and over. The car had a ceiling, and when Hamilton reached that ceiling, he could not push through it. That is a painful thing for a driver to feel, especially a driver like Hamilton, because Hamilton has built an entire career on making impossible situations last longer than they should. He knows how to nurse tires. He knows how to defend without wasting everything. He knows how to wait for the right moment. He knows how to turn a difficult car into a result that looks better than the machine deserved. But even he cannot create energy the car does not have. He cannot remove drag with talent. He cannot cool the car with belief. He cannot stop a tire from overheating if the car is forcing it to carry too much of the burden. That is the harsh truth Ferrari's data may have exposed.